So today I'm going to be reviewing the LARK MAX from Hollyland, which is their most recent addition to their wireless microphone system lineup. The reason I provided myself with one of these units is because I was searching for something compact yet easy to deploy that I could use in my professional work. For those of you that don't know, I am a location sound recordist on film and TV sets, so I was definitely looking for something that was both reliable and that could meet industry standards. This product review is going to be broken up into quite a few sections, and don't worry, they're going to be timestamped, so if ever you're in a rush, you can actually just skim through everything. But I highly recommend you stick around for the entire thing because I'm also going to be including some practical tips for you to get maximum usability out of your LARK MAX units. Now for starters, we're going to be learning how to use the LARK MAX as well as going over its many features. After this, we're going to be taking the LARK MAX out into the field and testing it both indoor and outdoor, in line of sight and out of line of sight, to make sure that you get a complete grasp of what this unit is capable of in terms of wireless fidelity. Finally, if you stick around to the end, I've included a bonus section where I show you how to use the LARK MAX as a plant microphone inside vehicles. So that being said, let's get right into the product review. All right, so we're back in the studio, and basically what we're going to be doing is giving you a rundown of the LARK MAX, starting with the receiver. So this is the main menu, and this is actually also a touch screen. So this is a button here you can press, and by pressing that, what we have access to is the microphone menu, which allows us to control the transmitters remotely. So you have 1 and 2 here. And so what each function does, so this is basically to mute and unmute it. This is to arm it, the onboard recording remotely, which I think is super useful. If you have it on actors and actresses, you don't want to go and bother them, so you can just take care of that from this menu. And you also have the noise reduction that you can activate remotely. So I think that's really cool. If we press this, we go back. And if we turn the dial any direction, we get another menu over here, which allows us to set the output levels of each channel, left or right. So if we just go all the way back and now we click on the menu button, we have access to the menu along with the sub menus that go with it. So recording mode is a pretty important one. I usually alternate between stereo and safety track. To be honest, I should have it set to safety track right now. And if you're wondering what that does, that basically allows you to record a duplicate of your signal at a lower volume in case it ends up clipping, which is the next best thing to 32-bit float, because these transmitters don't have that, sadly, but this is still pretty good. And stereo, if you have both of them, that way you can have individual isolated channels in post, which is essential in my opinion. So that's really cool. So then also we have the mic settings. So here we can adjust the mic gain, or more specifically the microphone input, which is not to be confused with the output that we saw on the screen before. So this actually adjusts the input gain of the microphone. I think that's much more important to set than the output gain, in my opinion. Now we have also auto record, which I usually leave it off because personally, especially if you're working on set for multiple hours a day, you do not want to have hours of audio or give hours of audio for post-production to sort out. So I just manually arm them and disarm them before and after each take. I think that's much more practical. You have the auto off, which I set to never because I just don't want to run the risk of anything turning off in the middle of a take. I don't think it will, but don't think it's that necessary. The battery life is not going to be an issue with these little guys. The LED brightness, if you want to adjust the LED brightness, I just leave it at normal. And the storage, so this is where you can actually format your internal storage and see how many hours you have left, which I think is really cool that you can do that remotely. Now we also have this menu, which is the phone speaker, which allows us to enable our phone's speaker while the receiver is plugged in. If you're using, you know, Lightning or USB-C, I think that's really practical. I always leave it to on. In the EQ menu, we have 3 different profiles we can choose from. Hi-Fi is the default, meaning there's no change. Low cut cuts at some low frequencies, which I usually do in post anyways, but you know, you can get it done in production if you prefer to roll that way. And vocal boost is just, you know, a particular EQ profile. I personally wouldn't, you know, do that kind of thing in production. I would leave that for post. So I roll on hi-fi 100% of the time personally. System settings, this is a bit less interesting, but you know, we have the ability to repair the transmitters if ever the link gets lost. We can adjust the brightness of the screen, have access to firmware updates using the USB you know, connector if ever Hollyland does release any. We can set the date, and one feature that doesn't get talked about enough is the time. So we can actually set the time, you know, to like the second, you know, like, which is really practical if you're using time code, because this doesn't have the ability to have time code, but this is the next best thing, because if you have your time code set the time of day, then in post it'll be much easier for them to sort out your onboard recordings if ever they need to rely on them. So make sure that's set to time of day, and make sure your time code is set to time of day as well for the best results. Here you have the ability to change the language if you want to do that, to reset the factory default settings, and to view the version info. So that's pretty much it for the receiver. I'm just going to show you guys one really neat feature, which is this button right over here. If you press it, what it does is it locks the screen, so you can't do anything with it. And I'm really relieved of that, because there's a lot of times where I'm actually doing things, you know, like, you know, moving it around or whatever, and I accidentally press this button, and then you never really know what ends up happening. So this is a really good thing to remember to press once your settings are set. So that's pretty much it. Let's move on to the transmitter. All right, so here we have it. This is the LARK MAX transmitter unit. As you can see, it's powered on, and the blue light means that the noise reduction is not enabled. If the light were green after pressing this button right over here, it means that the noise reduction is active. So that's how you know whether that's happening or not, and you can also double check on the receiver end. So I'm just going to put that back to normal, and this button also has a double function as a relink. So if you want to like relink it to the receiver, but personally I've never had any, it's never actually unlinked itself, but if ever it does happen, this is how you can enable the link mode. You also have a power button, which once again, I don't really end up using, because the unit automatically powers off once you put it back in home base. And, you know, when it's out, I'm usually using it. So, and I think the battery lasts like, you know, plenty of time. So I don't think there's any point really of powering it off. If you want to save battery, I would just put it back on home base. And here we have a 3.5 millimeter input for an external lavalier microphone, which I think is an absolute essential feature. So this is going to allow you to get, you know, those professional film quality level lavalier microphones, such as the COS 11Ds, you know, the DPA mics, all of that good stuff if you want to upgrade. But to be honest, I'm really impressed with the microphone on the LARK MAX. So it's just, you know, so you can actually use this as a transmitter and not also as a microphone. So that's really practical. Just one quick tip over here. If you're going to do that, I recommend getting it terminated to a right angle 3.5 millimeter jack. So because the reason that being is, you know, you kind of want your microphone to go up that way. If it's just a standard jack, it'll kind of like poke out and take up more space. But to be honest, not like these things take up that much space to begin with. On the other side, we have the record button along with a light, a LED light to confirm if it is recording or not. So you can manually arm it from the transmitter itself, you know, if you're the one handling it. And that's basically it. So that was the transmitter from the LARK MAX set. All right, so we're back at the firing range, and what we're going to be accomplishing here today is testing the LARK MAX's wireless range, which is stated to be 850 feet. And that's pretty much going to be, if you see the electric post behind me, that's pretty much where that's going to be at. Maybe that's even going to pass it a little bit. So we're going to see what that's like. And the second thing we're going to do, and as you can most likely hear, this is a pretty noisy, well, relatively noisy, not too noisy environment. You hear planes passing by, you hear cars passing by, bugs, cicadas, maybe a little bit of wind. That's where we're going to be testing the LARK MAX's noise reduction capabilities to see if it performs as well as they say it does. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk all the way back there to that electric post, and I'm going to come all the way back. And I really hope that you're going to listen to that the entire way through. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler. You're going to be disappointed as I'm walking back there, but as I'm coming back, you're going to be pleasantly surprised and maybe even a little bit impressed of what this thing is capable of. So I'm going to be talking to you guys the entire way through, and I'm going to repeat myself on the way back just in case you miss a little something. So let's get started. So I just turned around, and you're most likely already starting to hear some dropouts, and that is to be expected if you're using a 2.4 gigahertz system, because these frequencies have a particularly difficult time passing through the human body. So what I'm actually doing now is basically not anymore. And it's is if the transmitter and the receiver, they can see each other at line of sight. Right now they can't see each other, so we're not anymore, even though we're out in the open. So you're most likely not hearing anything of what I'm saying right now. That's completely fine. I'm going to repeat myself on the way back. So that's why this is sounding the way that it is. And if ever you're going to end up in a situation like this, which, to be completely honest, I don't see how you would film set, well, you still have to, which is, practical and can save your butt in a situation like this. So I almost reached the mark, and if any of that, I'm going to repeat on the way. I'm turning around now, and what do you know? All of a sudden, you can most likely hear me perfectly clear without any interruptions whatsoever. And as I was saying on the way to the electric post, the reason that is because 2.4 gigahertz has a hard time passing through the human body. So basically what my body was doing was blocking the line of sight. So if these two devices, the transmitter and the receiver, had eyes, well, they're not in line of sight anymore because they couldn't see each other. Now they can. So that's probably why that's definitely why you're hearing me now and not before. And when I was at that post, I was pretty far away, and you could hear me without any interruptions. So that's pretty impressive to me, because most of the time you're not going to have your actor with his or her back turned to you. And if ever it does happen, sorry about the plane, we're going to take care of that afterwards. You're basically going to have the onboard recording to save your recording if ever it does drop out for a second or two. But most of the time you only hear dialogue when it's in front of the camera, and that's just if you're working on film sets and stuff. If you're doing YouTube stuff or interviews, you're most likely not going to have a problem with this at all. So that was the test. That was the wireless range test. So now we're going to be moving on to the noise reduction test. So let's see what this thing is capable of. So hopefully we're going to have some planes passing by now, because as you noticed in the previous test, there are a lot of planes passing by in this area. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to activate the onboard noise reduction, and hopefully you'll still hear my voice with impeccable, clear quality like you're hearing it right now. All right, so this is perfect because we actually have a train passing by on my right, and it just finished passing by. I don't know if you can hear that. We're only going to find out in post. But right now, the noises I'm hearing, without noise reduction, right, because I have human ears, are traffic passing by, some cicadas, some insects, maybe a little bit of distant traffic, a little bit of a plane that's actually coming our way right now. So this is the perfect way to test if this will get rid of planes. It's just about to pass right over us right now. So I don't know if you're hearing it. I don't know how my voice sounds like. Is this affecting my voice or not? We're going to find out afterwards. But I just want to give you guys a pretty good idea of what this thing is capable of in terms of noise reduction, which actually uses a different type of technology that cancels. So you have two signals that are basically going to be canceling each other. That's what they call ENC, noise reduction. It's the same kind of technology that are used in Apple earbuds for their noise reduction capabilities. So let's see what that sounds like. So that was the demo. Now I'm going to bring it back to, there we go. And now there's a fire truck passing behind and you can clearly hear that. But that's just, you know, the kinds of things you have to deal with if you're living or working in a city like this one. So we're back in the loft, and basically what we're going to accomplish here is we're going to do an indoor wireless range test. So we've already done the outdoor test, and that's what most people end up doing in their product reviews, which is, I think, still an important environment to test a wireless system in, right? Which is line of sight, outdoors, out in the open. So we really get an idea of how far we can go with it. But it's also important to test it indoors, right? When you have like walls and things, you can potentially, you know, obstruct the line of sight. That's more important if you're working on film sets and TV sets and that kind of thing. So of course, for me, that's kind of important to find out. So we're gonna give you a little demo. I'm actually gonna be recording with my iPhone so you can see where I am in the actual loft, and we're gonna see how far I can go with this thing. A little spoiler alert, I'm actually kind of impressed with this thing, how it performs indoors. So anyways, that being said, make sure to watch this segment to the end. So I'm gonna grab my phone now. I'm gonna start recording and let's see how far I can get. So yeah. So I'm walking, and yeah, one thing worth noting about the 2.4 gigahertz is that it does have a more difficult time passing through the human body, right? But it has a much easier time passing through walls and that kind of thing. So here I'm in the washroom. This is basically the end of the loft. That's usually where actual Wi-Fi starts dropping out. So let's see if we can do that. So now I just turned around, and yeah, so 2.4 gigahertz, as you know, it's easier to pass through walls and stuff, and you're most likely getting a pretty good idea of what this thing is capable of now. And you know, like I said, it's pretty important because if you know one of your actors goes into another room or something, you know, the scene, that's how it goes. Well, you know, you don't necessarily need to follow your cast around. So anyways, we're back, and as you can hear, this is what the LARK MAX is capable of indoors. So let's find out how that sounds like in post. All right, so right now we're in the Jeep Patriot, and basically I'm going to show you guys how you can use the LARK MAX as a really amazing plant microphone. So if you're not familiar with what a plant microphone is basically a microphone that you plant somewhere, either in a scene, but usually in a vehicle. So this is going to apply mostly to use sound mixers on there, working on, you know, film and TV sets. So when you have a vehicle scene, most of the time the sound mixer will obviously have the actor or actress laved up, you know, which is what channel number 1 is being used as right now, but obviously it wouldn't be visible and you would be using an actual external lavalier microphone. But the sound mixer might also plant a microphone in the vehicle somewhere, because sometimes vehicle scenes can become kind of unpredictable, especially when it comes to wireless transmission and that kind of stuff. So you kind of want to have as many fail-safes as possible, and a plant microphone is an excellent perspective to add to your mix. And in the case of the LARK MAX, since it has onboard recording, you will never have to worry about dropouts, because if you're going to be following in a follow vehicle, you know, you're most likely going to lose signal. And, you know, to be honest, even if you're standing outside of the car, you might have dropouts here and there because of, you know, the fact that the car is made of metal, it's air, you know, a bit airtight and that kind of stuff. But so yeah, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a POV perspective of what it would look like to rig this up inside the vehicle in just a moment. You'll most likely be able to clip it on, you know, like using the provided clip or the magnet. But what I also recommend getting is some of these, which are double-sided tape, because there's going to be places obviously where you're not going to be able to clip it on, like for example behind the steering wheel, on the dashboard, you know, those kinds of places. So yeah, so that's why you're going to want to have this. And you know, like, don't worry, it comes off really easily, and it'll just give you so much more possibilities to mic up a vehicle. So let me show you a couple of spots where I would personally plant the microphone, depending on the shot and what the camera sees or doesn't see. So here we are in the perspective of the sound mixer, and as you can see, I have our LARK MAX plant microphone placed right in the sun visor, and I actually clipped it on to the you know, thing that's basically covering the mirror, because then this sun visor has a mirror in it, and that's allowing us to have a little bit of an angle, so it's tilting downwards, which, you know, in regards to microphone placement is just a little bit better than, let's say, if I had it placed like, let me just unclip it, not to mention that it's also more secure when you're going to have a moving vehicle than if I had just placed it like this, where it's like just, you know, pointing upwards and a little bit less directional. And although this is an omnidirectional microphone, I still believe that microphone placement is important to get right whenever possible. So yeah, this is still a possibility though, and you know, it most likely won't go anywhere, but you never know if it hits a big enough bump, you know, and not to mention that the vibrations, you know, microphone capsule is touching the top, so just something to keep in mind. Another position I told you guys you can put it in is basically right over here. So you can mount it on your steering wheel using that double-sided tape like this. You know, if the camera sees this part, you can actually go a little bit further back and get it like right over here. You know, you can also ultimately get it behind, you know, like stick it on like this. You know, other potential spots too is like behind the mirror, but you know, you're gonna kind of lose a lot of directionality. But maybe if you go like this, you know, depending on the shot. And another cool spot that doesn't often get, you know, like a lot of visibility in shots, depending on where the camera is placed, is, you know, right on these vents, and you can actually just, you know, adjust your microphone like that. So that's pretty cool. So, you know, these are just some ideas that you guys can implement in your own sound mixing practices, you know, on sets. Obviously, if you're just shooting like a YouTube video or something, you're not going to need to, you know, be that intricate, but it's a really nice perspective to have, if to add if you have the chance. And like I said, with the onboard recording, you cannot go wrong with this setup. So that pretty much does it. I've shown you everything I have to show you in regards to the LARK MAX, and now you're most likely starting to develop your own ideas in regards to whether or not this system is the right fit for you. However, I will admit that I was particularly difficult in my criteria for the LARK MAX, and that's simply because my standards and my expectations are much higher than the average person. If you're going to be using this for YouTube videos and vlogs and things of that nature, though, I think this is going to certainly replace whatever you've got going on right now, and potentially even the microphone that you're using right now, because I think one of the key highlights of the LARK MAX is its integrated microphone. It's one of the highest quality microphones I've heard in this size. So if you're going to be comparing the LARK MAX to another system like the Rode Wireless Pro, the microphone capsule itself is larger, and obviously that's going to provide a better fidelity. But other than that, I think the wireless range is also something that, you know, personally impressed me, especially in the indoor test. In the outdoor test, something I forgot to mention is that 2.4 gigahertz also needs surfaces to bounce off of to provide a consistent result. So in wide open spaces without any walls or anything, you know, in sight, you're going to need to rely on the line of sight. So the transmitter is going to have to be facing the receiver. Otherwise, you're definitely going to hear dropouts depending on how far you are. So that's the main reason where we're getting dropouts. It's true that 2.4 gigahertz has difficulty passing through human tissue, but as you noticed in the indoor test, that was not a problem. Other than that, I think I will personally not be relying on the noise reduction. I have to admit that some of the cases where we used it, like when a plane was flying over or when the train was passing by, were quite extreme. But I think that's it's best to leave that kind of noise reduction to post-production. If you're going to be using the noise reduction, I would only use it for things like live streams and stuff where you will not have any post-production, because you might have been able to hear it, maybe not, but the quality of my voice was deteriorating a little bit in certain situations, so best not to risk it. And that's pretty much it. I do have a few recommendations for Hollyland for future iterations of their products. I don't know if it's going to be possible to add this to the LARK MAX with a firmware update, but the inclusion of timecode capabilities would be really appreciated, and so would 32-bit float recording. Those are rapidly becoming industry standard on film and TV sets. Not so much in the YouTube world, but still could be useful in certain situations. So that being said, I am very impressed with the LARK MAX. I'm definitely going to be keeping these in my sound kit and using them 100% for plant mics, and might even use them as backup lavalier microphones if ever my UHF system isn't performing too well, or if ever I need a couple of extra channels. So what do you think about the LARK MAX? I hope that I've managed to answer most of your questions and concerns, but if you have any more, feel free to leave them in the comments and let us know what you think. Other than that, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you can stay tuned for future videos just like this one. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.